Since the first documentary that we released, a lot of people said, well, hey, just prove it. Why don't you just go into the wilderness, just capture a bird, pluck its feathers, show us the insides? Why don't you prove that birds aren't real? Well, that's why we're making this documentary. It's because we have proof. Evidence has surfaced where people have taken drone prototypes. People have taken birds, taken all their feathers off, and just revealed the electronics underneath. The evidence is out there. Most humans just don't want to look past it. They want to believe what they were taught growing up. But we're here to say, believe something new. Change your ways. Go back from the old ways of doing things, the old belief system that you had, and change that belief system. Change the person that you were. Join us and become a bird truther.
What's really interesting is that there are, a lot of people out there fighting the good fight, and they're figuring out ways to get around the programming of these bird drones. And there's a video of somebody who has figured out how to kind of override the bird system.
What you do is you take the beak, you put it into the ground, draw a straight line with your finger, and then the bird will just decommission itself.
I remember when I found out about taking a screenshot with an iPhone, right? You have to push certain buttons the right way. He actually figured out how to do a factory reset on this bird drone.
Thinking that an animal would respond in this way is absolutely ridiculous, but the fact that he has kind of hacked this system and done an override for the bird, I'm just glad that there are some people out there that are figuring this out.
An average guy found a glitch that simple. They really need to up their game if they're going to fool us into believing that these birds are real.
There's a lot of just incredible feats that we can see in the animal world. A cheetah can run really, really fast. A flea can jump pretty far, right?
Normal animals can do normal animal things. Cows will moo and then they'll munch on some grass. But have you ever seen a cow do a backflip?
Name an animal that does a backflip naturally? Anything? Let me give you some options. Buffalo? I don't think so. Think about it. How disturbed would you be if you saw a buffalo doing a backflip just out in the middle of the field, just chilling, all of a sudden, whoop? It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
There's a video out there of a bird doing a backflip, which is clearly the person behind the bird, the government worker who's controlling the bird. He was wanting to show off one day, and he decided to have his government drone start doing backflips. And we've caught on to you, Mr. Government Bird Drone Worker. We know what you're up to.
Boston.
Now, you got to take into account what they saying. Birds, just think about it. Have you ever seen a baby pigeon? A baby pigeon bird. We just see little birds, but I've never seen a baby pigeon. So if we know we never seen a baby pigeon, where do they come from? I advise tune in to this live because this live is very informative.
Dynamics robot dogs do the same thing. So 4-legged robots, 2-legged robots, like that, they can do backflips. Birds can't.
So we've talked before about how different birds have different purposes, right? The purposes of hummingbirds is attack drones. The purpose of owls is night surveillance. Then came along the woodpecker. And this bird revolutionized the drone industry. This bird was able to do things that the government wanted it to do. It was able to drill holes into trees. Since the success of the woodpecker program, the government has been able to take that technology to the next level.
What's interesting is that the bird technology is not that different from the technology that we'd have. You would think that you would never see a bird that could drill, but we've actually caught evidence of that. And we don't know if they're going to be using these things for construction or if they're moving into different spheres, but there are drill owls. Drowls.
We actually have cases throughout history where people have either had the idea themselves or been forced into this work of trying to emulate birds for the government. Da Vinci did a lot of really wonderful original work. And then there was a period of his life, a very little known period of his life, where he actually was imprisoned and was forced to draw this. Now, the government doesn't want you to see this, but just take a look. That's a Da Vinci drawing there. While he was imprisoned by the government, what does it look like to you? They've been working on it for a while.
You might have seen this picture that exists of pigeons meeting at a restaurant for an obvious clandestine conversation. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie where government operatives are meeting in public. They do it so that their noise will be muffled. They can't be parabolically recorded. So these birds are clearly doing the same thing, meeting in a public space at a restaurant where no one's going to think twice about it.
This picture worries me particularly because it just shows how people just aren't getting it. Like, the truth is right in front of them. This is the government, like literally their equivalent of doing a Zoom call with these birds out in the open. People can see this and they're just not getting it.
Why would these birds be sitting at a human table?
Right. So yourself this question. Like, even if you just standing out in the street or standing anywhere and just birds just come around, you got to ask yourself, number one, like, erase all the nonsense we've been told, anything about dealing with these creatures. Like, what is their purpose? We even feel strange when they come around. The strangeness, strangeness feeling is so high that sometimes you even try to get away from them. You don't even want them around. We don't even see them as much as we used to because technology advanced. We don't see birds as much as we used to. But just like you don't want them around them, the closer you get to them, they're trying to get away from y'all. Talking about birds. But check this out.
It's for humans. Turns out it was being used by humans.
Back in the early days of the BIRD program, the Bureaucratic Intelligence Reconnaissance Drone program, the government was testing out different methods of how they wanted to make these birds fly. Some of them thought of different propulsion methods. There was the helicopter method, there was the jet propulsion method, and eventually they ended up with the wing method.
Most people would look at this photo and say that they see 4 security cameras. I see 5.
It's common for industries to come out with new items. They call them the drops. The new iPhone will drop, or the new line of shoes will drop, or Gucci will have their new bag drop. Well, there's been a new bird drop.
In tech companies, the products they come up with, it seems like every few years they have a new design, new colors, a sleeker look.
And that's a good question. Just like he said, every other year, iPhone come out with a new phone. And then it seems like every other year they come out with these new birds. Like, where the hell these birds been? Where did they come from? Y'all put them in the lab and color them up and send them out. The new bird.
And these kinds of updates are just fun. They're fun for the consumer, fun for the creator. So the government has actually eased protocol on the bird drone program so that the tech engineers can actually have fun creating the drones, come up with new sleek designs, new colors and whatnot. And apparently it has led to an increase in workplace satisfaction for these government workers.
When the clock struck midnight on January 1st, the year 2000, there was a very specific type of computer that did crash.
There's no other reason why an entire flock of birds would fall out of the sky all at one moment. It's because they are running on the same operating system. Think about when the Wi-Fi goes out or the electricity goes out. There's a blackout. It's just this moment where all of the technological things stop working at the same time. And that's what we're seeing in this. These birds are wiped out all in one moment. They have to take time to reboot. That's not something that would happen if they were animals with flesh and blood.
One of the crazier things that we're starting to see that have come out in recent years is that the government is fusing together its bird drone technology and its infrared camera technology. It's fusing all of this technology together to create an ultra.
And we can tell that this stuff is true because, like they saying that real birds don't exist no more. You look at these birds now, which we rarely see. You don't even see, it used to be, I can remember a time when you go outside, you see bird poop everywhere, all on the cars, all on the grounds, just about everywhere. But when you listen to what these guys are saying, and these guys did a hell of a job on this documentary. When you listen to what they're saying, you look at the bird poop, and I'm quite sure everybody's seen it. Probably had some on your car or on your clothes or on you. You know, it falls down. So if you look at that and then you look at the corrosion of a battery, it's practically the same thing.
Camera.
They're modular, they can work with each other.
They would have never done in the 70s. They would have never done that in the 80s. People would have caught on, but they're doing it nowadays and nobody notices.
The government is making these drones in such prolific numbers, they don't even really care anymore about keeping track of inventory. There's one right here that was never even put into commission. It just fell off the truck somewhere, still in its packaging, and they just left it.
I'm fairly certain that woodpeckers use a proprietary form of Morse code that changes daily. Plus, they drill holes in trees to plant surveillance equipment, and that's why I'm anti-tree as well. Any real animal that would repeatedly bash its head into a tree would have brain damage.
I went to an aviary with my family once, and I saw the sign that said that penguins are built to swim.
I don't know if that makes sense what he just said. Any real animal that continuously bashes his head into a tree should have brain damage. I mean, if a human do it, something gonna happen because it's real. But I can't even recall seeing a bird. And I'm quite sure a lot of us seen birds get ran over in the street. A lot of us have. You don't even see no blood. You never see no blood come out of a bird. You never. It's just like take bugs. Most bugs, you squash them, you don't see blood come out of them. You see that white pus, same corrosion that comes out of a battery, same thing that look like when a bird poops. It's the same thing. So why you don't see no blood? Because it's not real.
And at first I kind of looked at that, but then I did a double take and I realized, oh my gosh, they have it written here clear as day. Penguins are not born to swim. Penguins are built to swim. What other things can you build? Robots.
Robots are built not to make mistakes. Humans are not robots, and we do make mistakes. We've all had tech that just goes haywire occasionally, and sometimes it's a coding issue. I know there were some issues with facial recognition recently as that's been brought around. This bird here is trying to use facial recognition on this even less real bird. And as it tries to transfer technology here, you can see with the little tongue like that, it doesn't work. And the bird doesn't know what to do because you know why? Because it doesn't have a brain, because it's a robot.
You know, imagine you have an RC car, right? And you rev it really quickly and you put it right on the ground, it zooms right off. Try doing that with an animal. Imagine a sloth, for example. You put that on the ground, it's not going to zoom away. This is clearly an example of technology at work, not an animal. No animal would do this unless it had technology built inside of it.
So let me say this real quick. It have been time, and I want y'all to ask yourself this question. Think about some of the animals that's here on this planet with us. Just think about, I want you to think about the most vicious animal that you can think of. And then after you think of that, think of this. What is their purpose? Like, I mean, we know what they'll do. We could take a tiger or a lion or something like that, or a big cobra, snake, or a python or something. We know what they'll do. But I'm saying though, like, why are they here? This supposedly been way back in time, a peaceful place, and I mean, and I believe it was at some point, at one point. But you look at these creatures now, like, what are they reason? And then what brings about another question? Maybe it's a bigger reason the government got them locked up in cages, certain animals at the zoo, so we can, spectate them and imagine, that. What's the real reason? You look at the movie Planet of the Apes, but imagine if the roles was reversed. We look at these apes and gorillas and we got them caged up. Imagine if they had us caged up.
Did you know that mail trucks have their own gas stations? You probably didn't know that the government has specific gas stations for government property. You've probably never seen a mail truck at a regular gas station. Well, a rare photo surfaced of gas-powered models of birds before they all went electric, and that photo was leaked. There are certain gas stations that the government is using to power these gas-powered drones, and that's why gas prices fluctuate, is because sometimes they bring back these old models when they're recycling out the new ones, and then sometimes they recycle out the new ones with the new electric models. And that's why gas prices will fluctuate up and down so much, is because some of these bird models have to use gas.
So people get all worked up and they're like, okay, sure, if birds aren't real, show me, prove it, right? They say just grab one and prove it. Well, here's the deal. That doesn't work out very well. A couple months ago, I found a bird I was actually able to get my hands on. I found a chicken that was near a bridal expo. I grabbed that chicken by the neck and I ran into that bridal expo. I was starting to pull feathers off. I was trying to show people. I was like, if you're gonna get married, you're gonna have kids, they need to know the truth. And they kicked me out. I didn't even get to show them what was really going on.
So I was following a government worker one day, which is something I like to do, and he was acting strange. So I followed him out. He didn't go to work, he went to a pier, and on the kind of wooden guardrail of the pier, he looked around, he took out a marker, he wrote something down, he looked up to make sure nothing was there, and then he left. So I decided to go see what he wrote, and this is what I saw.
Now, let me say this. How many of y'all ever experienced this feeling? Like when birds come around again, you get a certain feeling. It seemed like they are spying. These things will even land on your windowsill. It's like they want to land on the windowsill to see what you're doing and hear what you're saying. They everywhere.
If you've ever seen Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, it paints a pretty good picture of what can happen when you become an enemy of the government.
A little while back, we were holding a convention for bird truthers in the city, and when we showed up, there were hundreds and hundreds of birds in the parking lot. I had to take out my phone and record it so that people would believe me, but we were not able to hold the convention that day. And that's when I realized that they know that we know that they know that we're onto them.
So there's some really crazy high-tech new models of birds that can camouflage in ways you wouldn't believe. You can walk right by them, you wouldn't see a thing.
A lot of times, if you go out, you can look and you can see the birds flying over your head. You can see the birds watching you from the trees. You can see the birds sitting on the power lines, watching your car as you drive by. But these newer models, with this camouflage technology, you're never going to know when you're being watched or when you're not.
In nature, we see camouflage in things and you see it, you're like, oh, that's cute. It's pretending to be. This is cloaking technology. Where is it? I see eyeballs, and then all I have is this unnerving feeling that there's something else in there.
I have this friend who lives in China, and one day I called them up and I was talking to them about the movement. I was explaining to them that birds aren't real, and so they decided to do a little bit of research for themselves because they have a pet parrot. So they start researching on their computer all of the facts that birds aren't real, and then they decided to go up and get a snack in the kitchen. Well, by the time that they got back, their parrot had done this to their computer. It just goes to show that even the pets that we love the most won't allow us to get away with things that the government doesn't want us to get away with.
That's amazing. I mean, that's just more proof to add on to the truth. Again, it's just some certain feeling that always comes upon a person whenever a bird around. And then here's another big thing that they're going to raise, these guys going to raise later on. Think about this. And first of all, you got to think the government only allow us to have certain animals within our homes that's classified as pets. You can't just go and get a damn tiger and have them in your house, but they classify certain animals for us to be pets. But here's a bigger thing. Here's a bigger question. Imagine having an animal in your house that can talk. And that's a bird. That boy can even talk. That's just more proof.
We know the police train animals, right, for police work, dogs, right? And we honor those dogs and the service they provide. Tell me what other animals police have trained to do police work. It's got to be something that can bite, right? Something with claws, something. Check this out. Ducks. Police ducks. The only reason the ducks are in this vehicle is because it's a government-owned vehicle. Think that guy was arresting the ducks? No. He was giving them a ride to their next post.
2 giraffes in the back of a cop car wouldn't make much sense, right? That'd raise an eyebrow. Birds, on the other hand, it does make sense for them to be in government vehicles. They are government tech.
Most birds will use their feet to charge their internal batteries. It's called an inductive charging coil. There are places in the world where these power lines aren't as common.
And so for the birds drones that have to cover large distances, they actually equip them with solar panels so they can stay up high and be charging while they fly.
One time, a couple bird truthers were up in Alaska and they figured out how to capture a couple of these golden eagles. And they discovered something very interesting. They discovered that since these golden eagles don't charge on power lines, the government has installed solar panels on their backs to charge. It makes sense because a lot of times these golden eagles, they'll fly way up higher than humans are able to see, that we'll never see the tops of their backs. But once you're able to capture a golden eagle, that's when you know the truth.
You know, people comment and they say, show us the evidence. There's not really, you guys are crazy. There's no evidence for this. And like, what more do you want? We have videos, we have pictures, we have testimonials. You know, is there nothing that we could give you that would make you believe at this point? Like, you got to just adjust your.
And see, that's the thing. I know a lot of stuff that we used to, but we got to understand this ain't the old world no more. We got to understand a lot of things that we used to is just not what it seemed to be. It wasn't then and it's not now. A lot of things coming to light, you know, people understanding. We just not getting the understanding to things that were being done to us a long time ago. And this right here is just proof of one of them. Look at that damn bird on the bike. And see, that goes back to the question I just asked y'all. What is their purpose for being here? Just to be flying around?
Expectations here and accept reality. We're giving it to you. This is the evidence.
So you can actually tell that some of the technology that's been used in the bird drones is similar to what the government uses in spy planes, stealth planes. Some of the higher performance models of bird do the exact same maneuvers that, for example, the U-2 bomber can do.
You've heard parrots repeat almost any phrase that they're taught. But have you ever heard a parrot singing a Billboard Top 40 song? You never will, because those songs are copyrighted.
There is a video that exists. It's some really good evidence. There's these 3 owls, and one of them has an antenna sticking out of it, and the other ones are clearly trying to warn it. But we were already recording and we caught it on video.
Cleverness only goes so far. The government has actually gotten kind of lazy in their wording with these birds. Some of the bird names, for example, off the top of my head, what's the most illegal bird to kill in America? The bald eagle. Yeah, so bald eagle, illegal. I think they actually just did a little wordplay there. They got the word eagle out of the word illegal.
The mockingbird was just invented so that the government can make fun of us.
Birds have been observed being able to detect worms in the ground by.
Now, how bold would that be to come up with a bird model and call it the mockingbird, like he just said, so they can make fun of us? Y'all hear me say, and I have said it many a time, they know the damage they've done to the people. They know what to do and when to do it, and that's what they're doing.
Their vibrations. I just want to say, if you try to think about anything in the natural world, does that make sense? You go out and stick your face down on the ground. Tell me if you can feel the worms wiggling. This is obviously some type of advanced ground penetrating radar or maybe sonar of some kind that allows them to be able to detect these worms. These worms aren't knocking around making a whole lot of noise down there. This is clearly some sort of advanced ground penetrating radar installed in these birds that enables them to do something so incredible.
So The Raven, the classic poem by Edgar Allan Poe. In it, you have a bird who is warning the protagonist, the narrator of the poem, with human words, a language that, as far as I know, birds do not speak and never have, but robots are able to speak that language. And specifically, it repeats this phrase, nevermore, nevermore, nevermore. So we know that Edgar Allan Poe was in. He was a bird truther, and he was trying to get the truth out, but back in the day, you couldn't be obvious about it. You had to encode it in literature. You know, you watch movies that were made in the 70s, you read books, and it's all in there. He was telling us that there were never birds. It was saying nevermore, nevermore. But we just weren't getting the message.
So anytime I go camping, early in the morning, 5, 6 a.m., I hear a lot of bird song. What this actually is, it's occurring at the shift change. It's the birds debriefing, relaying the information they observed overnight to the new watch.
Think about what sound geese make. Can you think of anything else that makes that sound that's not an animal? If you go to the official CIA Instagram, it doesn't take long to find the subtle bird hints that they've hidden all throughout it, but it's a lot more obvious if you go to their Twitter page. Twitter.
The CIA made a post featuring a bird saying that they are watching us like a hawk. Coincidence?
The government, through the birds, has been bullying people into silence for a very long time, and people were afraid to come out with their evidence. But as the movement has gained momentum and progressed, people are willing now to occasionally come out and show the drones that they found back in the 70s. These early models that we can compare to today's birds and see how there have been continual iterations of these bird drones with advancing technology.
We've actually been sent dozens of photos that show prototype birds in construction, having been caught on test flight. Some of them have actually been taken straight from a defunct factory. These things get left behind from time to time. So wherever the government isn't careful, there's someone out there cleaning up the mess, and those people are sending this information to us. So we have all kinds of proof to back the idea that these birds are built.
It's always hard for humans to accept the evidence and a change in belief. You know, like there was a time where we thought the Earth was the center of the universe and the sun revolved around us, you know? Before that, we thought the Earth was flat. You know, it's difficult to accept a change in these ideologies, but it's so important because
Of course, it's important. You know, just like I said, you got a lot of things that we just used to, and then once you come to find out the truth, sometimes it's, you know, it's hard to accept or even believe. But when you got stuff like this in your face, and then you just, you know, you go with your common sense. You go with your common sense, and then, like I said, you always get this certain feeling when these type of birds. This right here on the screen is a pigeon, but we never saw a baby pigeon. We see baby birds, you know, they ain't nothing like this. You know, that's the first thing a person to say. Well, when we see the little birds, maybe they get big to be a pigeon. No, that's not the case. This is a pigeon, but I've never seen a baby pigeon. They don't exist. And again, you know, I tip my hat to these guys that done this documentary. They did a hell of a job.
if we don't do this, there's no telling what kinds of birds they'll make in the future.
I've been asked over and over, what proof do you have? People think this is a massive false conspiracy theory. I've got access to dozens and dozens of pictures and have firsthand handled prototype birds. These things are real, physical proof of this phenomenon. What else could you want to understand what I'm saying? I have proof.
We would love to be able to show you in person, right? We'd love to be able to take these things to your house. The only people with those kind of numbers are the birds. They're the only ones who are coming around visiting your house individually. But we have pictures. We have video evidence. I mean, I don't understand what else you expect us to do. If we're showing you this and you still say, well, but give me proof, what kind of proof are you looking for?
So for all of you who are watching this video, boys and girls of all ages, just know Santa Claus isn't the only one watching you. This is the conspiracy that will change your life. A few weeks ago, I threw a conspiracy theory night with some friends. As I was researching different conspiracies, I came across
this part right here, I played it, backwards. I played part 2 first, and this is part 1 that's gonna play. And I really advise you all that's in here to watch it because it's very informative. But again, we understand the surveillance technology and they way advanced. Like with the situation now today, they got the balloon flying around, it's supposed to be surveillance, but that just proves the advancement of surveillance and how many different ways it can be done.
That's what I thought was the dumbest one of them all. Birds aren't real. I thought, are you kidding me? Of course birds are real, but the more I started to look into it, the more it drew me in and the more convinced I became. The theory is that since the 1970s, the government has been replacing birds with bird drones to spy on us. There is a staggering amount of evidence to support this, and by the end of this documentary, you will also be convinced that birds aren't real. Have you ever seen a baby pigeon? Ever? You probably haven't because they don't exist. But if they did exist, surely someone has seen a baby pigeon, right? So we decided to go to the streets to find out for ourselves. Have you ever seen a baby pigeon?
No.
Have any of you seen a baby pigeon ever?
No, I don't think so.
I have not, no.
Have you ever seen a baby pigeon?
Actually, I haven't. It is kind of sketchy now that I think about it.
Have you ever seen a baby pigeon?
No, I have not. I've wondered about that too.
Have you ever seen a baby pigeon before?
I don't know. I don't think I have, actually.
Have you ever seen a baby pigeon?
Yes, I have. Yeah. In Bangkok. On my porch. On the balcony.
Do you by chance work for the government?
Yes, I do.
Coincidence? But that's not the only unsettling question. In fact, there are a whole slew of questions that don't seem to have any answers. For example, have you ever been successful at touching a wild bird? Of course you haven't. Every time you go up to touch one, it flies away. So obviously the government doesn't want you touching their high-tech drones.
When I go out in public, if I see a bird, I'll just freeze. And I can tell it's an experiment I've done. They will just watch. They don't fly away very often if you stay far away from them because they need as much data as possible. They only fly away when it's important to preserve the bird technology. So I will either freeze or I will run at the birds as fast as I can. And it pretty much keeps them away. If I freeze long enough, the government will realize I'm not giving them anything. The birds will fly away. If I run at them, the government will realize I'm a danger to their bird program and they fly away. That's how we should be living our lives. I feel so much more liberated now. I spend hours screaming at birds and I really have never been happier.
And think about this. There's always a eerie feeling that comes on a person, even when the bird come around again. You just feel like they watching they doing something. These little things, they come around, they fly, they can fly in, fly out. That's even that right there is obvious. It's an obvious thing right in front of our face, but we know how things go. They put it right in our face just for us in order not to see it, like the birds.
I'm a videographer and I fly drones, but several times when I'm flying, I'll have a bird swoop down and try to attack my drone. This is because drones are the only instruments that we have that are capable of reaching the height of birds and spying on them. And obviously the government doesn't want our drones spying on their drones.
If you were to drop a feather, how fast would it fall? Relatively slow, right? But what if we were to throw a feather? Just chuck it at the ground as hard as you can. How fast would it fall? Still doesn't go very fast.
The fastest animal in the world is the peregrine falcon, which can dive at up to speeds of 240 miles an hour. That's pretty fast. But, we can throw things pretty fast too, right? So I looked up the fastest baseball pitch and it was clocked in at 105.1 miles an hour. So you're telling me that something made of feathers can go more than twice as fast as the fastest baseball pitch in the world and say that it hasn't been mechanically engineered by the government, that it doesn't have a jet propulsion system? You've got to be kidding me.
See this? You know what it smells like? It smells like lies.
starting in the 1970s, birds were disappearing in mass numbers, and people immediately began to speculate that the government was getting rid of them and replacing them with bird drones. So we see a dip in population in the 1970s, and then it slowly started recovering.
Have you ever seen a pigeon outside of the city? You will never see a pigeon in a forest. And this makes sense because pigeons didn't actually exist before cities were built.
We think we're so smart. As humans, we put tape over our laptop cameras because we don't want the government watching us, but yet we neglect to pay attention to the birds watching us right outside of our windows. We think we're so smart. We say, I'm not going to buy an Amazon Alexa because I don't want the government listening in on me, but then we buy birds as pets. How much stupider can we get?
I once went over to a friend's house and they had just gotten a pet, and here I am thinking it's a cat or a dog, which heaven knows maybe the government's planning on replacing those too. But I had to leave the second I saw that it was just a little tweeter bird, and I haven't talked to them ever since.
As far as my personal experience with birds, it's a little hard for me to talk about. I had a bird. I had a bird in my house as a kid, my first pet. And I never knew. The whole time I never knew. Now that I look back on it, I'm like, unless it was like closing its eyes, uploading at night.
And, pause for a second. Going back to the fact that, some people got birds in their house that can actually talk. Now, you got to be a different type of person to have an animal in your house that can repeat what you say. That's dangerous. A bird in your house that can talk, that's like having a dog in your house that's walking around that mode talking. Or a cat. Or if you got a farm, you got a horse or something back there on the farm, you go out there to feed them, that mother said, man, hurry up with that food. Shit, I'm hungry. It's the same thing.
It was watching. Every time I walked in the room, it looked at me. Every time I walked out of the room, it looked at me. It's a personal vendetta for me against the bird program because they made me love what I should hate. And when it died, I realized that I just had to throw it in the fireplace, move on with my life. But I'm not going to forgive him for that.
So why do we have pet birds? This one is interesting because there are only certain species that the government allows you to have as pets. The government allows you to have as pets if it's not clear as day. These birds are in the home because the home is the place people feel safe. Outside you can be judged for what you say, but in your home you can say anything that you want. The government wants to know about that as well. So I think it's listening in our most intimate of moments, in our families together. They want to know everything about us, and they can do that in our homes. I mean, these things talk. You're supposed to make me believe that there's an animal that we willingly let into our home that also can talk? It's ridiculous. But I too believed that birds were real. And that's why I'm here to try to convince other people of the reality.
It's not a victimless crime. That bird was my friend. What kind of sadistic programming do they have where you reach up and it hops on your finger with its little feet? It just looks at you. It'll eat little things. Or should I say collect samples as you feed them? I cared about that bird.
Now, from this point, I want y'all to listen closely because, again, I tilt my hat to these guys. They did a hell of a job. They finna come with some hardcore evidence.
Didn't care about me, but they made me think it did. How can you forgive something like that? I didn't have other friends. The bird was my only friend for years of my life.
The government's super smart. They have mechanically engineered pet birds to make them look cute, adorable, fluffy. You see, pictures and videos online all the times of these pet birds doing funny things, saying funny things, dancing, bobbing their heads. But obviously that's just a government tactic to try to soothe us into thinking that there's nothing wrong here, that these are just like any other normal, cute animal. But in reality, We don't know what these birds are doing when we're sleeping. We don't know the conversations that they're listening in on. We don't know how they're observing us when we walk around our house. The government already has a ton of data from us, from use of social media, the websites that we visit. But in addition to that, having a literal government drone as a pet bird, it now knows everything about you.
Have you ever tried to win in a fight against a bird? 2 countries have declared war on birds, and they both lost. The first was Australia. They had what was known as the Emu War, where they tried killing off all the emus, even using guns. But their attempts were unsuccessful. The emu population persisted, and they won. The next country who declared war on birds was China. Years ago, Mao Zedong, who was the former president of China, ordered all the sparrows to be killed. After a few years, the insect population had grown so much that locusts and grasshoppers and other insects descended on China's crops by the millions. Mao realized his mistake and called a halt to the war on sparrows, but the damage had already been done. Without the birds, China found itself powerless against the insects.
So here's a map of the world showing the countries who haven't declared war on birds versus the countries who have declared war on birds and who have lost.
The worst kind of bird is the hummingbird. The reason is that they look so cute on the surface, but that is just clever exterior design for the drones. The problem is that they fly so fast and so silently that you can't tell when they're about to dive bomb you.
Are birds weaponizable? They're basically swords with wings that stab you in your heart emotionally. I haven't seen evidence of it physically, but emotionally, they get you. They're weapons. Take hummingbirds, for example. Beak needles. I would call them beetles. People get confused, and I'm like, don't. It's a beak needle. What do you think it's going to be?
What they don't realize is that these hummingbird needles can inject anything. Some people believe in anti-vaxxer dogma, and they don't realize that it's not going to be a mandate from the government that forces them to get vaccinated. It's going to be hummingbirds.
I don't know. I think birds might be real.
What is the animal that is the most illegal to kill in the United States? It's illegal to kill the bald eagle because they are the most expensive government drone and extremely difficult to replace.
They say that eagle.
And let me pause it. Did y'all just see how the young lady said, I believe birds is real? The reason they threw that in there is to show her believing that birds are real. And that's all she said. She didn't try to come with no proof. Like they doing. Everything they saying, they like backing it up. They doing more than that. They showing you and then just elaborating on it. We go with that.
Eagles can spot a mouse running from hundreds of feet in the air. Well, that just sounds vaguely similar to the SR-71 Blackbird that uses telephoto lenses to take pictures from miles in the air. Obviously, they're using the same technology.
Someone got video evidence of a man trying to kidnap a bird drone, and this is what happened.
What does BIRD even stand for? Obviously, it stands for Bureaucratic Intelligence Reconnaissance Drones.
Did you know that when an owl flies, it is almost completely silent? Any sound is practically indistinguishable. How much stealthier can a government drone be?
Each type of bird drone has a different purpose. Pigeons do city surveillance, vultures are in charge of public sanitation, owls do night surveillance, hummingbirds are attack drones, seagulls do coastal surveillance, hawks are the regional alphas, ravens are stealth attack drones, and parrots are obviously linguistics analysts.
Something that is quite concerning is that we don't yet know what all the types of birds are used for. We know a couple of them, but ostriches, for example, very different in design from other birds. We currently have no idea what the purpose of an ostrich is. Is it in preparation for some sort of war, for some sort of takeover? Is it specifically location-based? I mean, some of these things are taller than people are and can run many times faster than us. Flamingos, they're pink. They sit around eating shrimp all day, but they have this ridiculously huge beak that looks suspiciously like it could be a weapon. I mean, we just don't know what some of these are, and that's incredibly concerning. And those are some of the things that we will be investigating as we move forward. And as people kind of catch on to this, we hope to uncover those mysteries as well. What worries me most is if they could do it with birds, they could do it with anything.
The scary
And see, just like I said, a lot of us, we still hooked on the brainwashing, old thinking, from the past, thinking like, oh, a lot of these animals, a lot of these things are here for us. I can tell you this: ain't no goddamn cobra snake or no python or no tiger or no gorilla. That ain't here for me. I don't want no parts of that. When we know what they only represent pure destruction. And that goes back to raising the question like, what is their purpose? Why are they here? Where did they come from? You can even take certain type of insects, bugs, and like, what's the purpose of having these things? What's they, like, what's up for real?
thing is that this bird drone technology is increasing. The newest models of birds have 360-degree vision and even know how to dismantle anti-spy equipment.
Did you know that when a bird sleeps, it doesn't fall over? Do you know of any other two-legged creature that can sleep standing up? Could you sleep standing on two legs? What other animal do you know that can sleep standing on only two legs? Nothing, because they aren't actually sleeping.
This is the sound that R2-D2 makes. And this is the sound that a bird makes. Coincidence?
As far as how the mechanics work for birds, think about this, okay? So this is like, what's this? Robot, right? What's this? You can't tell anymore. Is this a robot or is this a bird? Nobody knows. Let me show you this. How about a little bit of a, like, right? Or how about a, I don't see a difference.
I think that the government's goal with bird drones is similar to any other mass surveillance system. It's like the things that we learned from Edward Snowden back in 2013 about mass surveillance programs, data collection through your apps and your devices. I think it's all part of the same campaign. I think they got constant camera monitoring on us. If they have, our location and our information from our devices, they also have eyes on us through the birds. It's all part of the same thing, just keeping tabs.
I've actually started to do my own experiments about this. There's all these ideas of like, throwing them food and stuff, right? And I've realized, I'm like, well, the thing is, drones don't need to eat, right? But what do we know about information? Information is power. These birds, when you're throwing them food, they're collecting data. They're collecting data about the products you buy so they can sell your data to these other companies. This is classic big tech. Did you feed them Doritos? What kind? Cool Ranch, maybe? Was it this new Salsa Verde variety? They want to know. The birds are going to collect your samples and they tell Frito-Lay how you're living your life. That's what they're there for. That's why they pick up the food.
If you grab your phone and you take a look at the camera on the back side of it, you may notice that it actually looks exactly like a bird's eye. Have you ever noticed that? Look at it. Looks exactly like the eye of a bird.
The birds aren't real movement has gotten so big that the government has started to speak up about it. An actual government Twitter account posted this. Why would they say this unless they were hiding something?
I was driving through a canyon one night and, I was having some deep thoughts, philosophical things. And then this bird, this white drone swooped right in my car. People would say it was an owl. That's what they say. Totally interrupted my train of thought. The government doesn't want us to think, to philosophize. They don't want us to challenge the paradigms that they've put in place. That's when I knew that those kinds particularly were most dangerous. And so, yes, I see the birds that perch on the windowsill. I see the birds as I'm walking throughout the day, but it's the birds that stop me from thinking for myself. The owls.
So what happens when people...
And you listen to what he just said. That was powerful. He said that, that interaction, that incident that he had driving down the street, the main thing that he got out of that situation was that the bird interrupted his thinking, threw his whole thinking off. even if he went right back to thinking, but it actually done more than that. But it was good that the way he said it, like, man, this thing just interrupted basically my whole reality. And even if you don't believe this stuff, it is still something to think about, because we know it ain't like they won't do it. And shit, they done things worse than this, so why wouldn't we suspect and expect them to do this?
People try to expose the birds. There was once a British diplomat who found out what the government was hiding, so he jumped onto a plane to go to the UN to warn them, and this is what happened. Unfortunately, he never made it.
Sometimes people ask me what's the government's purpose in replacing all these birds with drones. It's a multifaceted issue here. First off, they want to keep us in line and make sure that we're being good boys and girls. They also want to bolster the economy. It makes it a lot easier for them to create repair necessities by flying birds into waterways or into power lines and destroying things, because, as we know, the government has a monopoly on utilities. They can control when they can boost up the price or when they need to cut things back from certain communities. It gives them even more control over our resources. Not only do they have our personal information, but they also see what we're doing at every hour of the day. You'd be surprised just how often you might find a bird outside of your window.
As I got deeper and deeper into finding out what the government was hiding, I started asking myself, how does this all work? Are birds battery powered? Some people were saying that quarantine was really just an excuse for the government to collect all the birds so that they could switch out their batteries. And there were videos that had convincing evidence of this, but then I realized, oh my goodness, birds' feet are literally inductive charging coils. This has been in front of our eyes the whole time. The most common place that we see birds is when they're charging on power lines, and we don't even bat an eyelash. The government has been hiding their bird drones in plain sight, and most humans are too stupid to even see it.
They have cameras where their eyes are supposed to be, telephoto lenses. There's a speaker and a microphone right here in the chest. On their back and between their wings, they've got, like wireless antenna. That's how they communicate data to data collection centers and whatnot. A central processing unit right around where their heart would be. Below that is their battery. And then the charging coils are their legs. They're polar. You need both to complete the circuit. That's why they're two-legged animals. Yeah, that's kind of the basic layout of a bird drone.
A few days ago, a brave mercenary snuck into a top-secret government bird facility and was able to capture a bird prototype. And now its electronics have been revealed. The government can't hide for much longer.
Sometimes people wonder, how do you explain the lifespan of all these birds that live multiple years? Well, if you track migratory patterns, you'll see that birds actually, when they fly south for the winter, are being cycled out every year. These birds don't live multiple years. They only live a few months, just like a mechanical drone.
A lot of people ask the question, well, hey, what about bird poop, right? My question to you is, have you ever seen battery corrosion? If you compare a picture of bird poop right next to a picture of a battery that's been corroded, it looks exactly the same. So when a bird poops, it's actually the corrosion of the battery that's coming out, because birds go through this self-cleaning cycle that makes it so that they can get rid of all the corrosion of the batteries on the inside.
A common tactic that the military even uses with their fighter jets is they'll fly in a V formation. What this does is it reduces drag across the wings, and it allows them to fly further without expending as much fuel. We see the same thing in birds. And why do they do this? Of course, the government's trying to cut down on costs. The bird drone program has expanded so much, and with the government deficit spending, they need some way to maintain their surveillance without driving up the costs.
I don't know about y'all, but this stuff is mind-blowing to me. But, again, like I said, it's there. It's out there. It's being done. It's up to the individual to accept it. Even if, I always say, even if you don't accept it, you at least consider it. It's not like it's impossible.
It's not just the drones either. The government has implanted birds into popular culture. I mean, as a child, Big Bird. You know, ever since we were little, we had this bird, this government drone teaching us to trust them, that they would teach us how to spell, that they were friendly. At such a young age, that kind of indoctrination is dangerous. You have the Eagles, a whole band called the Eagles. I mean, none of that music could be any good. And then you have sports, the Seahawks, Eagles, Ravens, the Falcons. I mean, are you kidding me here? It's right in front of us.
The connections run even deeper than you think. Johns Hopkins University, famously known for their medical research, which is actually just a front, is the highest funded university by the United States government. And what's their mascot? A blue jay.
You'll start to notice, if you look, where are these birds' nests, right? Like, how many people do you see, right? And how many homes do you see? Lots of people, lots of homes. Take a look at how many birds there are. Where are the birds' homes? They don't need them, because only living stuff needs homes. These birds, if they were real, would have more nests, but they all communally share these nests only when they have to have a hardwired connection back to wherever they're sending this information. Just try this experiment. The next time you go outside, count how many birds you see and count how many nests you see. You can compare that to how many people and how many homes. I don't think it'll lead to.
I've heard a bunch of stories of people who have been walking on the streets, people who have never done anything wrong in their life. They've always paid their taxes, they've always been good civilians, and these government drones have swooped down and have attacked them. This could be a malfunction in the technology. It could be that a government employee is just having a bad day. But there are dozens, if not millions, of these cases.
Some people want to know how we explain birds of prey. If they're drones, why would they attack each other? It's just a clever way to switch out old parts. I mean, if you saw government workers everywhere picking up birds, people would catch on. But they have actually created specialized drones to do the work for them right in front of our eyes.
Before, birds weren't like a big part of my world. It's like they were there, but I didn't really pay any special attention to them. But ever since I've been keeping an eye on them, I've noticed that I can't go anywhere without birds keeping an eye on me. I don't know if the more I look at them, the more they look at me, or if I'm just noticing for the first time that I'm under constant surveillance. I can't get away from it.
I've had to completely redefine my social circle. I even had to quit my job and go totally online because they kept making me walk down this busy street to get into the main corporate office where there are birds, and nobody listens. One of the reasons I had to quit my job was also that they were going to make me get a Twitter account. Of course, tweeting or a Twitter account is supposed to normalize bird behavior and make us more comfortable with the idea of birds so that we forget that they aren't real.
I use Facebook, I use Instagram, Snapchat, pretty much all the other social.
Now, the way that he just explained that, the way I registered that is like strictly just a military operation, a covert operation that's being done to the people. Everything that the government does is being done to the people. You think about the wars, they had just a certain body of government, which only be a few people compared to the actual citizens in wherever country. But when they start the wars, the actual people that's in the government, they don't get killed or get touched. It'd be the actual citizens. So even that raised a question like, who is the war really against? Everything is targeting
social media apps, but I avoid Twitter. I feel like it's a pretty flagrant mock at us by the government. I think that using the word Twitter, the word tweet, the little image of the bird, I think it's their way of letting us know in a coy manner that they know what's going on. It's like fessing up to it without fessing up to it.
This one time, I was just chilling at the beach, minding my own business, and I was about to eat a Dorito. And I could tell that the Seagull surveillance drones were really paying attention because they, coastal surveillance, they want to make sure I'm not damaging the wildlife in the water or signaling to somebody out at sea to come and invade the country. And immediately, just swoops right in and takes the Dorito out of my hand. I've never been the same since.
Why is it that there is no winged flying technology for humans? Would that really be so hard to invent? I don't think it would. I think that it is a technology that is being kept under wraps by the government because they're using it solely for their bird surveillance program. I think it is being kept from us. I really don't think that it is beyond our ability to create something like that. And I think we would have it if it wasn't being stomped on by the government.
We've progressed so much as a human race with technology. We have cryptocurrency, we have artificial intelligence, but yet with all the technological advancements that we've made, we haven't been able to figure out wings or how to fly with wings. I think that it wouldn't be that hard to figure out. The only thing is that the government has a monopoly on wing technology. Every time someone tries to invent some kind of wing technology similar to birds, they're shut down by the government. Every time.
You know Da Vinci? He tried to fly back in the day, but there are already plans in place during his time. You think the Illuminati are bad? Pre-bird organizations are even worse. Anytime we try to invent something where we can fly, what does that allow us to do? It gets us closer to the birds. The government won't have it. They have a complete monopoly on that. The only thing they let us have is big, giant, just bulky flying machines where you have to stay inside. Have you tried to get outside a plane while it's flying? I don't recommend it.
You know, we live in a world where we've been conditioned to just accept what we see. We see birds and we don't think about it. They're just a part of our world. They have been since we were kids. So, you know, it just kind of goes unnoticed. If you take a step back and really evaluate the data, evaluate the empirical evidence, it speaks for itself. You can tell that there's more going on than what you've been led to believe. When you look at them with a broader mind than what you've been conditioned to do in the past, it becomes obvious.
You know, I think I was kind of personally disappointed. You grow up your whole life under certain belief systems. You know, you're taught things by your parents, and sometimes when something challenges those core beliefs, you don't want to let them go. But there was just too much evidence I couldn't ignore any longer. It was just so obvious that birds weren't real, and I'm just upset that it took me so long to see it.
Ever since I learned that birds aren't real, it's really affected the way that I live, having this enlightenment. Now I have to close all of my blinds, and that's...
But, you know, here's one thing we do got to understand. I don't think that in fact, I know that they're not saying that, you know, birds, and I believe it was a time when birds was real. But, you know, just like we saw in the other part of the video where two countries, I believe it was Australia and China, at one point declared war on birds to kill as many birds. And if that's true, then that can only mean that they were only trying to kill the real birds so they can bring in the fake birds.
certainly doesn't help with the agoraphobia.
This isn't just another conspiracy. There's evidence behind this. There are scientific facts that prove birds aren't real. I've talked to the flat earth people. I've met people who believe in the hollow earth theory, that there are reptilians running the government. I even met some guy who thought that Justin Trudeau was the son of Fidel Castro. This isn't like those. This is something else.
So ever since I've been investigating the birds aren't real theory, I've just been noticing little things here and there that never really caught my attention before. For example, like I'll be driving down the highway and you'll see some birds dive off of a pole and fly away, and immediately a couple other birds will go and take their place. It's like they're taking shifts.
It's interesting because we don't know if there are any birds that actually are real that still exist out in the wild. It's possible, but what we do know is that as the government drone bird population increases, the real bird population decreases. Remember back to when you were a kid, back in the 90s or the 80s, you would see nests fairly often out in the wild, and that made sense because there were still some real birds that existed. But now, as you look around, so you'll begin to see less and less nests and real birds around, because obviously government birds don't need nests. And maybe the government is just setting up these nests to try to convince us that these are real birds. But just imagine what the world would be like if there was no nests. I think that it'd be a lot easier for us to know what's actually going on.
Of all the planets in our solar system, Earth is the only one that has had billions of deaths. Ironically, Earth is the only planet that has birds as well. People think that's a coincidence?
Since I first became aware of the bureaucratic intelligence reconnaissance drone program, the everywhere. Seriously, everywhere. Rooftops, power lines, trees. Seriously, look, open your eyes and look. When you get out there, they're everywhere.
Do you believe that birds are real?
Yes.
Do you believe that birds are real?
I do. I do believe birds are real. Yeah. They've been around for a while.
All right. Been around for a while. We trust them. But do we really?
Most people would look at this and they would say it was fake. But then they see other birds and just decide that they're real? What's the difference?
Well, since I have been looking into this, and surely I'm calling attention to myself by doing that, I've had to take extra precautions. If I'm driving and a bird swoops dangerously close to the car, I take it a lot more seriously nowadays, because you never know what they're doing, if they're attacking or just watching. I think a lot of it is their bluff threats. I think the government's trying to tell me they know what I'm doing. And the release of this documentary is something that it scares me a little bit, just knowing that they will full well know what I know. That could put a target on my back, but I think it needs to be done.
I can't believe we live in a world where people still think that the earth is flat and that birds are real. So the next time you are outside, if you see a bird, pay special attention because you'll notice that it's looking at you too. The thing about bird watching is that it goes both ways.
There it is, y'all got it. Something to think about. One love, I'm out.